right, so thank you all. It's a pleasure for me to be here to speak about gardening to actually non-gardeners. Most of the time my audience are gardeners, community gardeners like myself. As I said in the introduction there, I've been gardening my entire life. I came here when I was just a little bit over. I became 21 in this country. So I've been here over 50 years, longer than any one of you have been on this earth. And I discovered public gardening, you know, when I was up there in age. And my first introduction to the realm of public gardening was really not through an horticultural lens. It was through development, I hate to say. But I moved to a neighborhood. I bought a building in Bedford-Stuyvesant, and I proceeded to see how the block was sort of derelict. And the people that were living there, they were homeowners. And they just didn't care about the environment. There were no trees on the block. I couldn't believe it. There were not one single tree on the, you know, a block of maybe 30-something houses, you know, contiguous rows of brownstones. And there was no culture. And I said, oh my God, I can't live like this, you know, because I had a beautiful garden in Coney Island that I could not sell my house because of the garden. I was so attached to that garden. I couldn't, you know, and I said, oh, because I created the space. And it was amazing. On my knees, it took me an entire weekend. I couldn't even go to work the Monday, my back. Anyway, and so when I came to this neighborhood, I said, oh my God. And I said, you know, the brownstones are beautiful. But if you don't have horticulture, if you don't have a green space, nobody sees the buildings. You can go down any block, and the brownstones are beautiful, and you just pass. But if you go down the same block, and the brownstones are derelict, but there are gardens down the block, the entire neighborhood pops at you. You know what I'm saying? So it overrides, horticulture overrides everything. And so I went to work and I said, oh my God. So I started with tree stewardship. I got Brooklyn Botanic Garden to come down and do a street clinic to teach us how to take care and to actually have trees planted on the block. And we were successful in getting all the trees on Verna between Troop and Marcus Garvey. And we also got the tree guards through the borough president, which those tree guards are like $2,000. We wrote a proposal, went down to the workshop, and you know, and from that initiative on the block, I pivoted over into the gardens, and that's how I became a community gardener. And the funny thing is, the same people that were living on the block that did nothing. They were long there before me. Some of them were born there, and they formed the nucleus of this sort of movement. I call them the Vernon Avenue Garden Ladies. We're all four African American women, all property, we had jobs, corporate jobs. Yvonne graduated from Columbia. Mona worked on Wall Street. I worked in the hotel industry. We were all for African-American property women. And we did some beautiful work because the gardens that were on the same blocks that we lived, 2 blocks, they were somewhat derelict. You know, back in the day, people would just have the garden for, I don't know, they really didn't do anything there. And I saw the way of building up the neighborhood was through these community gardens. And we went to work, and it was just us 4 women in the garden. The men didn't come because we're all middle-aged. You know, if we had young people attracted, they would come in, but they would come in for us. But we didn't care, and they called us the lesbian gardens because it was just us 4 women, the lesbian gardens. I said, so what's wrong with that? You know, and we went to work, we had no money, we did not have a bank account, we had no resources. Green Thumb was there to help us, but it was just like watching, you know, let's see what they're gonna do. And we brought our community together. We went from door to door. We had alliances with the bodegas around the man on the street. We got to find out that the people that we probably thought we had nothing in common with, we had so much in common with. And they helped us to really move the neighborhood. And so, of course, I started at TNT, and I was involved in the Daffodil Project. We bought 1,000 bulbs. We became a site on their walk, Daffodil Walk. And I was actually Miss Daffodil. They in 2000 and early 2000, the early 2000s, and I was lauded at Bryant Park. I had the commissioner on my table, and just 2 blocks away was my job, my corporate job, and they didn't know. Imagine that. I couldn't let them know because I figured, if you know, they want you so when you work in the corporate sector. They didn't want to know I had a life outside of guard, you know, coming in, and I was a credit manager for a hotel representative company, and so yeah, and so from there, I really, I found my calling, you know, through community gardening, and I want to tell you, there's very little horticulture in community gardening. There's more community. Very little. So you hear, you know, you hear community gardening and say, oh, you know, there's a whole lot. It's not a lot of, there's very little horticulture. There's more community. But therein lies the good, because you do a little gardening. But for me, community is everything. That's my hashtag. Community is everything. It goes to the core of everyone's existence. You could have family, you could have money, you could have position, you could have whatever. If you don't have community, and community is authentic because it's at will. Family is, it's family, you know, it's a right. But the community is so much more authentic because you share your life with community. You may not see your family unless if you live with them, you will see them, or your relatives. But you see your community every single day. And you share a life with them. You share a wall. You know, if they don't see you, your family don't hear from you, they call you at the end of the month, how you doing? But if your community member doesn't see you every day, they wonder. And therein lies. And when you think you have nothing with a person, you'd be surprised what you have in common with the man down the street that you never ever pay attention to, or you never speak to. And then of course, everything happens in a community garden. I say life happens in a community garden. People come in and you hear, they tell you their life story. And you said, oh my God, and you never know that you share so much, because I say that, you know, the woman that I developed this project with, under normal circumstances, we probably would not have anything in common, but we have one thing in common. We like horticulture, we like gardening. And because of that one thing, we have survived for 20 years up and down. There were years that we did not even speak, and now we're in a lull too. But eventually, the theme of our lives is horticulture, and it's building our community through horticultural practices. So in a nutshell, these are my parents, my lovely mother. That image was taken by a grad student at CUNY, and she did a thesis. And she came, I call this my American Gothic, my Caribbean Gothic. You know, the American Gothic? This is my Caribbean Gothic. I love that shot, you know, it's just amazing. She lives in California now, she's Ethiopian, and very, very dreamy young lady. And this, of course, is, the Tranquility is named after my family's home, our ancestral home. We still have land in Jamaica, and it's tranquility. And I have the bill of sale from 1800. And my grandfather was a headmaster. He started life as a teacher, and his death certificate listed him as a planter. Is that full circle? Yeah, his marriage certificate says, he was a educator, and his death certificate. And so he bought land, and we still own quite a bit of it. And so when I found this and made a proposal, and we had a meeting for naming the garden, and I threw it out yesterday, so what should I call it? And they said, well, what do you want to call it, Messina? I said, I would like to name it, after my family's ancestral home. And they said, okay, and that's what it is. So that's how the name came about. And these stones here were recovered. I'm also a bit of a preservationist also. These cobblestones were from the same tree bed that we nurtured. When they came to plant the trees, they took all these cobblestones out, and we had them bring it to the garden. And the slate also was from a neighbor's yard. Developers rampant, it's rampant all over Bed-Stuy, and they come and they destroy our 1899, cobblestones and our slate. And I was able to, and I put the word out, and when they were digging us, people would say, Messina, they're digging up the sidewalk. You want to say it? I said, yes. And the guy that dug it up, he brought it in. And so the garden, our path is like, so when I walk into the site, it's like just walking on my ancestors, because I know the neighborhood was a part of the Underground Railroad. And so that's representation. I will stay there forever. And of course, everything, all our plants are perennials. We really subscribe to the best horticultural practices. And we don't plant annuals. We plant all perennials. And mostly from seeds. That taro plant you see is about 5 years old. I keep cutting it back when in the winter, putting it in my basement, and trot it back out the next year, and it comes bigger and bigger and bigger. Yeah, from seed. Yeah. So let's go on to the next slide.
Can you say what perennial is?
Perennial means a plant that doesn't die, it comes back. It goes into dormancy, and it's perennials and natives. It's a more sustainable way of gardening than and it's better for the environment. Some gardening starts with perennials. I'm a bit of a snob. I mean, annuals are for color, but it's not sustainable because you keep spending money and it dies. But perennials, it just shows that the value of nature is that perennials go dormant and it stays on the ground, and then as the season begins, like yesterday was the first day of spring, we have plants that are coming up, and you see them actually coming up, like sedum and our daffodils and our tulips and our hyacinths. And so this is my parents. That was my dad. That was the last day before at the airport coming to America. I was 20 years old. I look like my dad, right? Spinning image of my dad is chilling. And this is my beloved mom, the smartest and most amazing woman I have ever met. And she, I had a beautiful childhood. Beautiful childhood. I had such an affirming mother. She never put me down because I was crazy. I had all these great ideas as a child, and she never, sort of, demonized me, or she would listen to my crazy ideas. And she was my best supporter in everything, even as an adult in America. When I bought my first building, and I told her, and she said, so how many rooms are there? I said, Mom, there's 12 rooms. She said, but that's a mansion. At the same time, my girlfriends that, you go to get affirmation, they were putting me down, oh, it's so crazy, why you want to have a big building like that? You have no husband, you have no children. But my mother. So I pray that all of you here have a mother like my mother. She made me feel I could do everything. She wasn't pleased that I was never married, but she got used to it. and she stopped trying to marry me off. So yes, so my mother, which Amanda picked up on that when she came to the preparation, the students, that, she is, she was vegan, she lived to be 89. She never ate meat, and she raised us as vegan. But we had a choice of eating meat, but just vegetables and fabulous life of, I never had coffee until I came to America. I never had bacon until, because she was, into health and wellness, and she maintained the same weight her entire life. She breastfed us, she read to us, we ate. I mean, it was this amazing woman, I'm telling you. Oh my God, and yeah, so it's like, yeah, so yes. And that's me and my sister. She's a registered nurse, midwife. I'm the first of 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys. She lives in Delaware. Okay, next slide. And that's my mom and I at the airport the last day. And that's us as children, 2 boys, 2 girls, and the eldest. Yeah, we're all alive. I wonder who's gonna go first. That's ghoulish, right? But yeah. The funny thing is, when my mother died, of course I was the eldest, so I was in charge of the money, and I ran everything, and we took care of everything. We never fought, and even though I was a contributing. It's amazing, and I said it's a testimony to how she raised us. We never fought, or we never, and my brother was running a tab and carrying on and didn't contribute a cent, but we just kept everything in the family, and we just supported each other. And I said, it's because of the way she raised us. We just supported each other. We never fought. We never, said, well, you didn't put or that, we just took care of everything. And it was a huge funeral, because my mom was sort of like a very important woman in the community. And yeah, so I learned everything from her. Okay, I digress. So that's me in my corporate life. I worked for a hotel representative company in Manhattan. We're based on Park Avenue, 45 Park Avenue. That's me at the Pier Hotel. We used to have our annual party. That's me in my early 20s in the neighborhood. I was potting up a plant, believe it or not. I had no land. I was planting, house plants, which was, we don't have land in America unless you buy. Okay, so let's pass all of that. So this is what tranquility used to look like. In 2010, this was the first day I set foot on this vacant land. And if you can remember, I don't know if there are any shots of what the garden looked like now as opposed to what it looked like then. I discovered, well, I saw the lot. It was next door to our 2 active gardens. And so where we garden is, our gardens take up an entire city block. Just think, in New York City, bus route. Both our gardens bookend us. There are only 3 houses on the block that we garden. African American women. We control an entire city block. And so this was vacant land for 30 years. For 30 years. There was a huge building there. If you go on my page, before there were gardens, you'll see the building that stood where that land was a yeshiva. And Barbara Streisand actually went to school there. I have a picture of her as a little girl performing. She lived a few blocks away. And I met a gentleman that was a peer, contemporary of her, and he told me, and and then I've sort of corroborated. I really haven't talked much about it. I feel I should hit her up for some kind of donation, right? But yeah, it was a beautiful building that existed on this lot. So if you can get on the page and see a really fabulous building, and you should see the building that existed at the corner, 2 doors down, a huge Beaux-Arts building. You don't even believe you're in New York in the 1800s. And so therefore that's how my Before There Were Gardens came up. So anyhow, I still have the stick. I took the stick up off the land, and that's when I first had access to this land that was vacant for 30 years. And I wrote a proposal in 2010 to get the land, and they gave it to us on a provisional agreement. So that was, 2010. And 4 years later, they came back and said they wanted the land. And we said no. And we fought the city of New York for 1 year. You understand? We had no support. Green Thumb gave us the provisional license. Brooklyn Botanic Garden gave us resources and lip service. And we found out that they put the land up for auction. We're in the Wall Street Journal. We found out through an organization, 596 acres, that the garden was one of 40 lots that was put up for auction for $1. New York City was selling our garden for $1. And we said, no. And so Green Thumb gave us resources to, they gave us soil, they gave us mulch, they gave us plants. But we were out there on our own. And we had so many meetings, and we wrote letters. We had the community that wrote letters for us. And we demonstrated at City Hall for 1 year. We fought the city of New York City for 1 year. And eventually, the Commissioner of Parks decided to come visit our garden. And that's when we knew that, we were going to be conveyed. Because why would he be looking at land that he doesn't own? And he came down. Mitchell Silver, he's a friend to this day, graduated from Pratt. He's a planner. And he's from the neighborhood, and he reported back to Green Thumb, so that's the most beautiful garden. And yeah, we were affirmed by that. And we were conveyed in 2015, one of 34 gardens that were conveyed. But can you imagine, we had this site, we were working there for 4 years, and then when they came and they said they wanted it back, and we had no support. We had no agency. We knew that Green Thumb would support us, but they would not go on record. They wouldn't go on record to fight for us. It was just us out there. And I remember I said, Brooklyn Botanic Garden didn't say a word. They have a garden alliance. They give us all kinds of resources, plants, all our better plants that we get from Brooklyn Botanic Garden. And I said, but this can't be. Why aren't they out there fighting for us and even going on record? And I didn't know, I didn't have his name, I forgot the ED, Newberry, Medbury, Scott Medbury was the CEO of the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. And I spent all night on Google trying to find his email, and I did. And I wrote him an email, huge, long email. But the core of the email said, I said, listen, you are our #1 facilitator. You enable us in all the work that we do in these neighborhoods. You do not have the right to remain silent because it may, threaten your position with your supporters. I said, you don't have that right because you made us what we are, and now you can't speak. And he didn't answer me. But he called a staff meeting the next day, and I'm friendly with all the people there. They called me and said, Scott called a meeting. And she said, we were all like this. And I don't know what he said to them. He had his director of strategic planning, but he didn't say anything. He still didn't say anything. He just, because you see how organizations are. They're worried about their funders, and they're worried about their status in the community. and they will, you know, they will help us. But when you get in trouble, we're on our own. And essentially, we really saved ourselves. As a bunch of us gardeners, we had meetings up in Harlem. We had meetings in each other's homes. We called radio stations. I tweeted every single day. I wrote letter to HPD, Vicky Bree, and my community wrote letters. So the mayor called me and thought, who is this woman? You know, I said, oh yeah, it's one of our gardeners. And but you know how frightening that is to know that they help us along, enable us, but now that we're in trouble, they're silent. And we were bereft. We said, oh my God. And, but we won, and they called a meeting down at City Hall, and the room was jam-packed and hot as hell. I mean, everybody was in that room, and it was wall to wall. Who could make it around the table? We're standing up, and, you know, what is our fate going to be? Because they didn't tell us. Actually, I knew before, because my people at Green upon me, I said, listen, you can't tell anyone that you're on the list of weekend. And I started to cry. I was closing up. I was presenting that night at Pfizer building, and I was locking up, and I called and I said, you know, I have some news to share with you, but you can't tell anybody. He said, you can't tell, you know, your second. And I said, I started to cry. Are you crying? I said, yeah. I said, you kidding? He said, you're on the list to be saved. I said, oh my God. And I went, I took the you know, his advice, and I presented at Pfizer that night, holding onto that. And for 7 days, I held onto it. I couldn't tell another human being, because it was top secret. It was not, the mayor did not announce it yet. They just saw the list because, in a way, they were you know, praying for us too, but they were not, I didn't appreciate that they couldn't say, you know, it was just behind the scenes. We want you to say it. They deserve to be saved. But we know they had a big role, but, you know, that's how politics work. And yeah, so we went down, and we were one of 34 gardens. And they gave us a new sign. Can we go on to? So I want you all to see, well, this is all some of the things that we grow. We grow garlic. We have almost 20 chickens on site. All of this, peach trees, fig tree, all of this, the grapes. We planted all of this on that vacant land that you saw there. And we grow edible food. Look at this. We get 145 heads of garlic from 2 beds. Our heritage chickens. The fig tree was given to me by a neighbor. She, you know, I lamented, I wanted a fig, and she called me one and she said, she's a professor at Princeton, and she said, you know, I have you a fig tree. And she gave me, and that fig tree has been propagated. It's in my backyard. It's in there, you know, and it's amazing. Look at that. Yeah, so we grow all this edible stuff. Look at that grapes. We have 2 vines. We have, that's for us. I have a vine. I have a theory that whenever we plant anything, we plant for us and we plant for the community also. So I have a community grape vine that trellises on the fence, and people that are passing by, they can, and I have a beautiful video of a homeless man chowing down. Man, I put that on Instagram. It was the most amazing thing. He just rolled up, he didn't see me. I was inside the garden working in a bed, and he was, you know, got off his bike, and I said, there, I felt so firm. And yeah, so that's one of the things that, and that's me at the Hattie Carton Garden. I drum my drum on Sundays. You know, drumming regulates your heartbeat. Yep, y'all know that? Yeah. Drumming regulates your heartbeat, and your pulse. Yeah.
You have raised beds?
Yes, we only, by compliance, we cannot plant directly in the ground because the issue of lead. I don't practice that in my backyard because I bust my ground and I see a worm. I said, there's no lead here. I did have the soil test though. But by law, with community gardens, we can only plant food in raised beds because of the issue of industrialization and contamination with soil, and so we have to, or they would shut us down if we grew. All right, next slide. And so this was part of the kickback when, so after we got conveyed, and I got an artist in the neighborhood to make up a sign, because during the time that we were fighting to save the garden, some people didn't know. We did not let everyone know, because it was so sad. You know, and we had such a beautiful, we have such beautiful support from the man on the street. Our gardens are so connected. In 20-something years, we've never had a theft. No one, no other gardener can say that. They're stealing stuff in East New York every day. We have never had a theft because the community feels so connected to our sites. They look out for us. And so I said, I need to tell the community what happened. That now, and so we didn't have money to buy a canvas, so we bought a shower curtain, and she painted Save Tranquility Farm. They said, what? When they saw it, they said, oh my God, you see how you didn't tell us? I said, it was so sad. You know, I couldn't, divulge to everybody. But, and then I posed, there's another community member on the other end, and she's cut off. And then this was a sign that my Princeton professor made for us that we had at City Hall. The same place, Amanda, that we had the showing for Tweed. It's ironic because it's amazing, 10 years before, I was on the other side on a February, the dead of winter, demonstrating to save the gardens. And 15 years later, I'm in Tweed, you know, and all the green thumb was there. I thought it was funny. Yeah, and so I still have these signs. I steer, like, you know, and so it was amazing. We won. We won. Yeah. And the sign, so that's one of our interns here has been with us since he was 5 years old, and he's now a teenager. He's a brilliant boy. He's going to college, and he helps us take care of the chickens. Yeah, I met him at 5 years old. He walked into the site, and on and off, I didn't see him, and but now, so he takes care. He helps Alex too. But now he's a teenager, is now into girls, so it's kind of hard. So we see him sometime. But we were just recently honored by our assemblywoman. But he's from great parents, you know. And then of course I met Peter through a panel, the laundromat project, which Peter has really taken, you know, because, you know, after 20 years, here I am walking around and in all these gardens, and now he's sort of, you know, level up. People are now listening and want to know, and it's because of, you know, our association with Cornell. And we had deep roots with Cornell that I had to, you know, share with Peter that he didn't even know. You know, one of our mentors, John Amoroso, which is a quintessential urban ag Cornell extension agent. And Peter didn't know him. He had the same email. This is, you know, cornell.edu. And I brought them together. They had a meeting, and we did a presentation at Pratt a couple of weeks ago. And he was, you know, he's one of my mentors. He was on the ground at the beginning of the movement. John's name is on every garden that was developed in New York City.